There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Rose Patton, and this is The Obsolete. And this evening, we're going to be talking about Kyle Odom. Now, if you don't know who he is, we're going to watch a video real quick, just so we're going to be talking about. So let's get to that first. I'll set it up. There we go. Bear with me. Okay. All right. So hopefully everybody can hear it. And here we go.
Tonight in the hunt for Kyle Odom. Within the last 2 hours, Odom's Facebook page was active. His profile picture updated to this drawing, and he also added 50 new friends. Odom is suspected of gunning down a Coeur d'Alene pastor Sunday afternoon, firing 10 shots at Tim Remington. Witnesses say Odom then sped away in his silver 2004 Honda Accord with Idaho license plates. He is still at large, and tonight it appears he considered shooting a second person at that church. That's according to a manifesto Odom mailed to his parents' home and a similar letter sent to the KXLY4 studios. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Nadine Woodward. 3 days after a pastor was shot outside his Coeur d'Alene church, letters the suspected gunman mailed are now showing up at local media outlets, including here at KXLY. Our Jeff Humphrey joins us now with a look at Odom's correspondence, now in the hands of Coeur d'Alene police. Jeff?
Nadine, it is clear that Mr. Odom wanted to take the guesswork out of who was responsible for Sunday's attack on Pastor Remington. The letter that we received at KXLY also assigned that Odom premeditated this ambush and likely had made preparations for his successful getaway. Today, a letter postmarked in Spokane on Monday showed up here at the KXLY4 studios. Inside this business-sized envelope was a single piece of paper that was titled "The Truth About Kyle Odom." It appears the note was generated on a color copier and that a similar letter that was delivered to his parents' home had a thumb drive inside. Detectives say documents on the drive contain rambling writings in which Odom lays out his reasons for shooting Pastor Remington. Police say it shows the attack was not random. Investigators are not saying if the manifesto provides clues about Odom's location or if he has any plans for violence in the future. Odom's father, Terry, tells KXLY that he had dinner with his son the night before the shooting, and there was no indication that Odom was planning any type of attack. Odom's dad says the Sunday shooting took them totally by surprise and that Odom is not a violent person. Terry Odom adds that his son probably doesn't realize the gravity of what happened in the church parking lot. Odom is urging his son Kyle to surrender himself to police wherever he is tonight, that his family is very concerned about Kyle's welfare and they want him back safely in Coeur d'Alene. Late this afternoon, a Facebook page registered to Odom posted this text about the shooting. It reads in part, "The world is ruled by an ancient civilization from Mars. Pastor Tim was one of them, and he was the reason my life was ruined. I shot Pastor Tim 12 times. There is no way any human could have survived that event." And so, Nadine, it's clear Mr. Odom is a troubled man who was not in his right mind at the time of the shooting. Coeur d'Alene police say Odom's mailed-in manifesto also indicates Odom was targeting a second church member. Detectives say they have contacted that person and taken steps to ensure their safety. Jeff Humphrey, KXLY4.
All right. So the sound and video are good? Oh, okay, good. Thank you. All right. So right there, I mean, that's a crazy story if you think about it. So I have his manifesto that I'm actually going to read this evening. But there is one more video of the shooting. Here, let me show you right here. It's amazing. He's saying he shot him 12 times and the pastor lived. Okay. Now the news media is saying 6 times. Once in the head. So with the 45, so the media is saying he got shot 6 times, once in the head, the pelvic, the colon, and the back, and blah blah blah. Kyle is saying he shot him 12 times. There is no way possible anyone can get shot 12 times with the 45 and still live. So yeah, crazy. So this is a year later what the news is saying about it, and then we'll get into the manifesto. So here we go.
A day of celebration at the Altar Church in Coeur d'Alene today. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Casey Lunn. It's been 1 year since Pastor Tim Remington was shot 6 times outside of his church. It's been a long road to recovery, but he hit a big milestone today. KXLY4's Brittany Harris was there as he played the piano for the first time. And Brittany, that was something he thought he might not be able to do again.
Casey, Pastor Tim has been playing the piano for more than 40 years. But when he was shot 6 times, it damaged his hand and he lost a lot of feeling in his fingers. He told his congregation he'd play the piano on the anniversary of the shooting. Today, he did just that.
Pray that my fingers feel these things.
Laughs, tears, and prayers were shared at the Altar Church today.
Today was an amazing day for a lot of people.
As Pastor Tim Remington blessed the ears of his congregation. Keeping a promise that he'd play the piano again.
I have been practicing to try to play, and it's been unsuccessful pretty much, mainly because I can't feel underneath my hand.
It was March 6th, 2016, that Remington was shot 6 times in the church's parking lot. The gunman, Kyle Odom, was arrested 2 days later.
1 year later, I mean, I guess I feel a little bit of the emotion of it because it was just such a setback. You don't realize when something like this happens to you, the time that it's going to take to get up.
But he did. It's been a year of recovery and hard work.
These bullets traveled through my body at a degrees that burned things, burnt my colon, my prostate, and different parts of my body. I still got over 30 pieces of shrapnel and 3 bullets in me.
And to mark the 1-year anniversary of his survival, Pastor Tim kept his promise to his congregation and himself.
Watching him play the piano when the doctor said it would be impossible, it just goes to show the power of God and his faithfulness in our lives.
Call it a miracle.
Call it a miracle.
Or the grace of God. Remington says he's made it through thanks to good friends, great family, and his faith.
God has brought me through it. I have no fear. You know, I still go in the parking lot and not worry about somebody shooting at me.
Pastor Tim says tomorrow will just be another day, that God's been good to him and he doesn't have any complaints. He also hopes Kyle Odom finds Christ and says he would welcome Odom back into the church. Definitely says a lot about who Pastor Tim is, Casey.
Wow. Okay, so there's 2 sides to every story, obviously. So we're going to look into Kyle's side now. Thank you. Hey, what's up, Influence? Hi, John. Hey, everybody. Oh, Tupac was supposedly shot twice as much. Yeah. All right. So does anyone have any questions so far, or you want to just go straight into the manifesto? All right. We are free TV. Thank you for coming in too. All right. So I'm not the greatest of reader out loud. I usually read to myself. So this is not something I usually do. So bear with me. We're going to read it together. Yeah. And it's probably going to take about 25 minutes. So if you don't want to hear me reading, just mute it and read for yourself. Otherwise, you know, okay. It's a crazy story. All right, let's get to it. So let's see. Oh, this is Tim Remington. We just saw him on the news channel. Funny looking dude. He looks scary. Anyways. All right, moving on. Let's see. Here we go. So who is Kyle Odom? Born and raised in North Idaho, grew up in a loving family, joined the Marine Corps after high school, developed an interest in science, went to school for a degree in biochemistry, won numerous scholarships and awards, graduated from Magna Laude, then got invited to a prestigious university to work on genetics. Check my personal documents. As you can see, I'm pretty smart. I'm also 100% sane and 0% crazy. Why did he do it? My life was ruined by an intelligent species of amphibian humanoid from Mars. I wish I was joking. Keep reading. Or we ever existed. Their technology is millions of years more advanced than ours. I've seen them do things that defy all comprehension. They have a massive breeding stock of humans, which they breed and control from birth. They use these humans to live vicarious lives among us. Completely normal because they're good at imitating human behavior. See Martian technology for an explanation on this. Live deep underground here and inside of the moon. Now, I'm not saying I agree with everything this guy is saying, okay? Martians and inside the moon, but I'm gonna be quiet. Okay. They take control of wild human beings and use them as sex slaves. Ask President Obama to take a lie detector test on this one. They tried to take me, but they were unable to control my mind. They've been following me ever since. I tried everything to get my life back. I begged, bargained, and threatened. I was sabotaged. I attempted suicide twice, but they stopped me both times. My last resort was to take action that would bring this to the public's attention. Read my story to learn what happened to me and why they targeted me. My story. Spring 2014, Moscow, Idaho. Everything started while I was at University of Idaho. Spring 2014 was my final semester, and I was taking a heavy course load. I was very stressed due to the intensity of my schedule, so I searched for a way to cope. I discovered meditation, which seemed to help, so it became part of my daily routine. As I learned more about meditation, I became interested in consciousness to affect it. I kept working on my meditation techniques and began achieving extreme states of consciousness. This continued until I encountered another meditation. It happened one night in February 2014. Experience I've ever had. Meditating, this suddenly left my physical body. It was completely dark and I had no awareness of my physical boundaries, or I felt very peaceful there until blue light began to approach me. Closer, I realized it was another being. Being's presence, immediate, I felt like I was being told, "You shouldn't be here." I instantly conceded and felt guilty. It's myself from the being. This had an impact on them and seemed to change their mind about me. I distanced myself from the being by a feeling I can only describe as unconditional love. Experience, unconditional love. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay. During this, our minds became connected and I saw that the being was female. I then began to feel the most euphoric, comforting, and blissful feelings I have ever felt. It was incredibly powerful and life-altering. Next thing I knew, I woke up. I had tears in my eyes and I couldn't get out of bed. I felt a profound sense of loss, like I had just lost someone close to me. It was very painful. A few minutes later, the experience left my mind, against my will, and I went about my day after that. I had no urge to meditate at all. Every time I even thought about meditation, the thought was stripped from my mind. Then I finally did try meditating again. I was unable to achieve anything. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I knew it wasn't going to improve. Ultimately, I decided to give up on meditation and just focus on my classes. The remainder of the semester became exceedingly easy for me. I felt like I had tapped into some kind of power. I was exerting no mental effort, even though the classes had been extremely difficult before. I also began to have complex thoughts and depth of understanding I have never reached before. About a month later, I started interviewing at the graduate schools I had applied to. Shortly after the interviews were done, I started receiving offers. I decided to accept the offer from Baylor College of Medicine to work on a PhD in human genetics. I was very excited about the opportunity to work at such a prestigious university. The future looked bright and I couldn't wait to get started. 14 through October 2014, Houston, Texas. Everything changed once I started the program. The moment I arrived, I could see flaws in every professor's research. My mind was so expanded that I could instantly understand the implications of entire research projects. Because of this, I was able to see weaknesses in all the available projects. This caused me to become very concerned about what I was doing, and I felt like I was wasting my time. I voiced my concerns to my advisor, and he casually brushed them aside. He told me, just have fun, it'll be fun. I kept trying to get motivated, but things continued to get worse. I started seeing flaws in the foundations of genetics and other fields. I got to the point where I couldn't stop thinking about them. To make things worse, no one else seemed to care, which really bothered me. All these issues made it impossible for me to continue, so I decided to leave. I just want to stop there and make sure everybody can see this. Okay. All right. So he decided to leave. Okay. The day after I decided to leave, my life became a living hell. I couldn't sleep and my mind felt sapped. I was entirely at peace with my decision, so I knew something strange was happening to me. After a few days of this, 2 of the graduate students began reaching out to me. Blank and blank. We don't know their names. I barely knew them, so it seemed unusual that they would contact me. When I went to see them, they both kept pointing their finger at me saying, pew, pew, like they were shooting a gun. They did this over and over, and I kept wondering what their problem was. Months after I left Houston, I was told that blank and blank were not human. They were tasked with making me into the next school shooter, as they called it. I imagine this is why many of our school shootings take place. Anyway, things slowly improved after I stopped talking with blank and blank, but I was mentally exhausted. I tried to figure out what to do with my life, but I could barely think, or hardly think, sorry. Eventually, I left Texas and started applying for jobs all over the country. A few months later, things took a strange turn. October 2014 through August 2015, CDA, Idaho. In spring 2015, I finally secured an interview with a food company. I thought I was about to get something going with my life, but I was wrong. I couldn't sleep at all the night before my interview. I literally stayed awake the entire night, which had never happened to me before. I looked unrecognizable in the mirror the next morning, and my mind felt sapped worse than it had in Houston. Needless to say, the interview didn't go well. I couldn't think, and I had extreme difficulty with normal conversation. After the interview was over, I suddenly felt fine and looked perfectly normal. I slept great that night, then made my way to the airport the next morning. This is where the story gets weird. On the plane ride back home, my seat was taken. I asked the flight attendant, and she directed me to a new seat. Once I sat down, an older gentleman in front of me kept glancing back until he got my attention. As he kept looking back, my head began to hurt and tingle. The moment my head began to hurt, his lips curled up into this evil-looking smile. The pain and tingling in my head continued for the rest of the flight and got more intense as time went on. Every time I felt it, the man would start taking notes in a notepad. About halfway through the flight, someone else in front of me held up a newspaper that said psychic reading for like 5 minutes straight. It was blatantly obvious they were doing something to me, but I didn't know what. Once we landed, the older gentleman kept showing me his track phone as to say, get one of these. I had applied to several government agencies before this happened, so I thought this might be their way of contacting me. I decided to go buy a track phone. I checked it every day to see if anyone messaged or called. About a month later, I got a text message from a guy named John Padala. He invited me to come to the church at the altar. That's what we just saw in the news clip, the altar, that church. It seemed like a strange place to be recruiting for government jobs, but I went anyway. After I got there and went inside, something felt very wrong. I felt as if my life was in danger, and I became so uncomfortable I had to leave. A couple of days later, I started receiving text messages from Tim Remington. That was the guy who got shot. At first, they were, Bible messages, but then he started threatening me. He sent messages talking about their power and other things. He did all of this through Bible verses, so it would not look suspicious. I ignored everything until sent one final text message, which simply said, angels. Of it until helicopters started flying around my house all day and night. At this point, I knew I was in trouble. I knew I needed to contact them. So I made an appointment to meet John Padala for coffee. Little did I know he had no intention of meeting me. After making the appointment to meet John, something very bizarre happened. I received the most blank I've ever had. It felt like someone was manually pumping blood into my blank. I can't say, you can put those words in there. I don't know how else to describe it. Immediately after that, a song began playing in my mind. The lyrics went, "He's just a plaything. We want to make him stay up all night." I've never heard this song before. I had no idea what it meant. I tried to ignore it and kept searching for jobs. A few minutes later, the song quit playing. Nothing else happened until I tried to go to sleep that night. As soon as I got into bed, the song started again. "Sister, sister, he's just a plaything. We want to make him stay up all night." As it turned out, they weren't kidding. I got literally 0 minutes of sleep that night. Every time I started to drift off, I was woken up violently, then the song would play. When the sun came up, I gave up trying to sleep and got out of bed. I was relieved at first because the song had quit playing. I thought the torture was over until a voice entered my mind. The voice said, "You're going to be uncomfortable. All you have to do is breathe." What this meant until the voice spoke again. It told me I was going to be sacrificed like Jesus and get beheaded. This threw me into a complete panic. My heart began racing and I started to have a mental breakdown. A few minutes later, some man knocked on my door. I answered and he gave me a pamphlet talking about the sacrifice of Jesus. My mind started racing out of control and I became completely delirious. I thought for sure I was going to die. My thoughts shifted to my family and all I could think about was seeing them again. Albuquerque at the time, so I decided to buy a one-way ticket there. When I reached the Spokane airport, my panic subsided. I got on the plane to Albuquerque. I sat next to this huge man who kept telling me telepathically that he was going to crash the plane. Every time after he spoke, he would sniff. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there trying to stay as calm as possible. The man became angry about this and started touching my leg. The second he touched me, I could feel him inside my mind. This caused me to panic until I was on the verge of causing a scene. Before I did anything, he told me to calm down and said, "You did a great job. You passed. Go enjoy your family. We have a job waiting for you when you get back." Highly relieved, but I had no intention of contacting him at all. My only thought was to get as far away from him as possible. After getting off the plane, I headed to the baggage claim. A huge group of them surrounded me there. I watched them cautiously looking at me. The sniff is something they do all the time. I think it has something to do with dominance. When I finally got my bag, I left the airport as fast as I could. My parents were right outside waiting to pick me up. I was so happy to see them again. I gave them big hugs and told them how much I loved them. This was my last happy moment in Albuquerque, however. They followed us everywhere we went after that. Whenever I saw one, they would sniff at me to let me know it was them. They would also smile and laugh and stick their tongues out. As time went on, they started coaxing me to go outside alone. I was scared to death they would kill me, so I refused. Eventually, they threatened to harm my family, which caused me to give in to them. I told them I would do whatever they wanted if they left my family alone. They responded by saying, "Go to church." I knew they meant the altar, so I agreed to go when I got back. When I went to the altar for the first time, the people acted very strange. It was unhuman. As I walked into the sermon room, everyone stared at me and began sniffing empathetically. Needless to say, I was scared as hell, but I took a seat. When the service began, a man came and sat down next to me. After he sat down, I began smelling something. It was a smell I had never smelled before. The only thing I can compare it to is a reptile and vinegar. After smelling it, I became very uncomfortable. I tried to remain calm and just sat there quietly until the service was over. When the service ended, they said, "You can leave now." I wasn't dealing with the government anymore. I realized that whoever I was dealing with was extraterrestrial, so I became very scared. I received no further instructions from them after that, so I began applying for jobs again. Even though I had done exactly as I was told, they still followed me everywhere I went. As time went on, they started harassing me day and night. More often, I began to hallucinate things that I knew weren't real. They also started playing with me sexually. Both the males and the females would play out their sexual fantasies in my mind. This came with random and uncontrollable blank, as well as extreme stimulation. The harassment continued for weeks and intensified as time went on. I did my best to maintain my sanity and tried to avoid them. This worked for a while, but eventually I had a huge meltdown. One day I was in the bakery at Safeway when I got surrounded by a bunch of old men. Some of them looked at me and sniffed, so I knew it was them. They started stimulating my blank and blank simultaneously. Then they spoke aggressively. They said, "Humans are nothing more than the result of a successful genetic experiment. You are a threat to the way these people think, and you can no longer be free in society. Your life is over. You are nothing but a toy. Your purpose now is to suck." Continue to say other explicit things that were so obscene, I won't repeat them here. I became enraged. It took every ounce of willpower not to kill them. I left the store and I tried to calm down, but it only got worse. The rest of the night, they continually stimulated blank, and I couldn't stop blanking. It got to the point where I was in serious pain. They finally stopped after I broke down and became completely distraught. I knew I couldn't take anymore, so I attempted suicide. I filled a charcoal grill with lit coals, put it in my car, and rolled up the windows. I reclined in my seat, lay there calmly, then fell asleep. I should have died, but they woke me up in an extreme panic, which caused me to get out of the car. As I slowly regained consciousness, I felt very upset to still be alive. I had no clue where to go at that point. I myself into the VA. They shipped me straight to the mental ward and I was admitted. Nothing improved while I was there. The medication they gave me did absolutely nothing. I just sat there surrounded by a bunch of psychotic people and became exasperated. I knew their goal was to ruin my life by making me into a crazy person. I became determined not to let that happen, and I started fighting back. After leaving the VA, everything I tried to do with my life was sabotaged. They didn't want me dead. They were going to let me live in desperation. Let me live. In desperation, I went back to the altar to ask them what they wanted from me. I didn't know what else to do. I need to make an important point here. I had endured so much abuse by this time that I was numb to them. The details of what they've done to me aren't essential to the story, so I won't include them here. If you want to know more about what I've been through or more about them, just write me. Just realize I've been tortured more than a POW. Their response was, "We want you as our sex slave." Thinking they were serious, I sat there waiting for them to do something. All they did was say, "Keep coming to church." So I did. After a few more services, I found myself talking to Tim Remington face to face. I considered becoming a minister. We were in mid-conversation when he suddenly revealed himself to me. I have no clue how he did it, but it looked as if his human face became his real face. What? It looked as if his human face became his real face. I don't know what that means, whatever. It happened for only 1 to 2 seconds, but I was able to draw a sketch of what I saw. His eyes really stood out, so they captured my attention. They were huge and bulging, green, and the irises were yellow-brown slit pupils. After witnessing this, nothing else happened. I continued attending the altar for a few more services, waiting for them to do something, except for tell me to submit and surrender. I had no clue what that meant, so I left the church and never went back. Excuse me. August 2015, present time, CDA, Idaho. After leaving the altar, they gave me some breathing room. They held back on their harassment and I began to recover. I decided to make one final attempt at a normal life by pursuing a career as a pharmacist. I started taking classes at NIC to finish up the pre-req I needed. I also started volunteering at a local pharmacy. Unfortunately, they followed me to school. There were several of them in every class I took. They made it impossible for me to study, and they continuously harassed me, especially while I took tests. Even with all this going on, I still somehow managed to get an A- and A and P during the fall semester. Sadly, my success was short-lived. The pressure this semester, spring 2016, is far too intense. Every time I go to class, they start manipulating my brain until I go into a blind rage. Sometimes they suppress my brain until I begin to black out. They also manipulate my heart rate and flood my body with adrenaline over and over again, making me extremely uncomfortable. The females stimulate blank when they are close, and males stimulate blank. It's incredibly exhausting. I struggled to pass my test, so they couldn't blame this on me failing out of school. I want to continue, but I simply cannot. Every moment I spend in the classroom is absolute torture, are extremely difficult without all this added pressure. The worst part is I received an interview for ISU's pharmacy program. Since I cannot continue with the classes, there is no reason to go to the interview. My chance at a normal life has been ruined. They've also been depriving me of sleep, so I don't have the strength to continue. I was too smart for my own good, so they decided to remove me from society. They were worried I might change the way other people think, which could lead to problems. Problems in the form of scientific revolutions. If we get much smarter as a species, we're going to become a threat to their existence. If you talk to me in person, you will see that I'm not crazy at all. I'm so good at hiding in plain sight that no one would know they exist unless they reveal themselves. So well that, however, they are 100% real. Realize their technology is millions of years more advanced than ours. Think about that for a second. Think about the advancement we have made in the last 100 years. Once you've done that, try to imagine what millions of years of technology would look like. The president is well aware of this, and he's talking about President Obama at the time, which is why I wrote him a personal letter. I hope he does something about it. I have done nothing wrong to deserve what happened to me. I tried literally everything to find a job, and they sabotaged me at every corner. Initially, I thought the right thing to do was kill myself. After attempting suicide twice, I became clear they weren't going to let me die easy. To take actions to bring this to the public's attention. I hope something good comes of it. Just realize I am a good person, and I'm completely innocent. Also realize that the people I killed are not what you think. To make it very clear, Tim and John were not beings. Wild humans equals normal people like you and I. Tim and John equals minds were controlled. And I know, nevertheless, it's all true. Why would I give up a career as a pharmacist to do this? I left out many details from my story. I wanted to write only the most critical events in order to make it coherent. Or like how I discovered there are multiple species of them, feel free to write me. Well, he's in prison now, so maybe you can get that address. All right. Why would aliens hide in a church? Question Q&A. Hide in mosques. Doing very bad things and you want to avoid getting caught, you will put up a front to make yourself look like a good person. How do you know about their technology? And they have talked to me about it. This is how I learned about their breeding stock of remote control humans. Physically, their humans are not different than us, their own. Why would they tell? They value me because I'm smart. They were also very confident they could take control of my mind. Turns out they couldn't. Anyway, in the interim, some of us developed a personal relationship. Very arrogant, so they told me much more than they should have. This allowed me to understand some of the things they can do. What else have you seen? I've seen them make things appear out of nowhere. One time I was sitting on a couch and a dollar bill appeared on my lap. Another time while driving, they made a paper bag appear in my passenger seat. They used random, unsuspecting items so no one would think anything of it. I was alone both times this happened. I'm pretty sure they can pop in and out of this dimension based on other things I've seen. I'm also pretty sure they can overlap our reality with an alternative dimension. I say this because I've gone into stores where I know the employees, and suddenly they were all new employees who I've never seen before. Some of the other things I've seen are so strange, I literally cannot describe them. So, their technology is millions of years ahead of ours, so it should be incomprehensible to us. Why did they target you? They started following me after I encountered the being through meditation. Since my mind was so expanded from the experience, they deemed me a threat to the rest of society. They thought I would change the way people think, so they decided to remove me from society. I found thoughts about genetics while I was at the graduate school, which is another factor. And if certain ways of thinking are allowed to exist, revolutions will take place. Hold on a second. Afford for us to have a revolution in genetics. If we did, we could eliminate diseases, cancers, and many things that plague us. They need us to remain ignorant and continue struggling. Otherwise, we will become a threat to them. Okay, so this will not make sense unless you are the president or one of his close friends. If this does not pertain to you, please ignore it. Well, we're going to read it. Mr. President, for your sacrifice to this country. It's very upsetting to hear you talk about the things they do to you. It's very upsetting to hear they do to you. Why do you let them? I suppose you have no other choice. I've been struggling with them myself for over a year now. I had nothing to lose, so I chose this instead. That much abuse. I hope you don't take any of their threats too seriously. Everything is a game to them. Realize they consider the entire human race a plaything, including you. What they do to you. I'm sure you already know, but he doesn't love you. Their brains don't even work that way. But they've shown me a lot about you. You're an amazing person. Them humiliate you. Why be afraid to retaliate? Kennedy wasn't. It's time someone took a stand to end this nonsense. Can you think of a better legacy than that? What's worse, having everyone know the reality of the situation or watching some of our best and brightest become slaves? I wish you the very best with the remainder of your presidency. If you're still in there, stay strong. All right. God, Lord. Okay. I observed their behavior for almost a year now. Consequently, I've been able to make several deductions about them. The first deduction is based on their primary characteristics, which include, number one, they are hypersexual. Number two, they are hyper-aggressive. 3, they are fearful and paranoid. In the human brain, the enigma, I hope I'm saying that right, is responsible for all these characteristics. Therefore, Martians must have and must be greatly enlarged. The morphology of their brain is also marked differently than ours. I know this because I've seen what the amphibian humanoids look like. The males are extremely aggressive. In their society, there is only one thing, and that is power. Biggest and strongest wins. One time I was talking to a young male who kept trying to intimidate/scare me. He saw that I was still confident in myself and immediately became discouraged. He said, "You think you're better than me?" Then hung his head and walked away. I told him that wasn't true, but he wouldn't listen. After this, every time I encountered one of the males in public, they would attack me mentally until they destroyed my self-esteem. They were scared to death of my intelligence. The only way they have the confidence to talk to me is if I'm scared or for my life or in completely despondent. To the males, everything is black or white. There is no middle ground. They are power-hungry megalomaniacs obsessed with control. The elite, so-called elite. If they are not 100% in control of every situation, they panic. If something happens, they aren't very upset. I was smart enough to trick them a few times. The males are megalomaniac, whatever. 2, obsessed with sex. 3, extremely aggressive. 4, fearful and paranoid. 5, power hungry. And 6, sound familiar? Who else do you know that has these characteristics? If you answered God from the Bible, you are correct. Well, I don't believe with that. I don't agree with that at all, but whatever. Martians are responsible for the God myth. Martians may have created humans as they claimed, but they are certainly not gods themselves. They are just another intelligent species that evolved on a neighboring planet. Here, but I'm gonna read it. There is no God, there is no heaven, there is no hell. Earth is as close to heaven as we are letting the Martians ruin it. They are going to destroy Earth, just like they destroyed Mars if we let them. Rests in their hands for the time being. Picture of what he drew. There it goes again. Huge eyes that stuck out of sockets, yellow brown irises. The 45 angle nostrils, huge mouth, dark green skin, and only part I ever really saw was the eyes. All right. This is what their teeth look like. Elmo rules the world, something they kept saying to me. Again, bits and pieces to me, and very briefly, thankfully. I have a photograph memory, so I was able to remember what I saw. The general appearance, because each time I saw them, it was very brief. They would smile at me and still their mouth, eyes, nose, all separately, never together at the same time. So again, that's the picture right there. So these are the U.S. senators, U.S. House of Representatives. Now, I actually typed in some of these names, and what the hell? They look like Muppets. Seriously, like pick any name you want out of this list and go type it in. You can see some things off, definitely. So I'm not saying all of them are real, but the ones I typed in, I'm like, wow. Faces. And they have that dead look in their eyes. Yeah. All right, so this is by no means an all-inclusive list. Ambiguous. They exist at every level of society and every nation. Some have blue-collar jobs while others occupy positions of power. Our military and corporate America as well. They keep track of every wild human on the planet and manage us like animals in a zoo. Our freedom is carefully crafted illusion. I'll make sure I post this entire manifesto under the video. So I'm gonna go to the comments, see what you guys are talking about. Hey, what's up, Malik? All right. Oh, thank you. All right. So, okay. Wow. So I'm caught up here. Okay. So next we're gonna go to, let's see. I say we go to Phil Snyder. Now, real quick. Phil Snyder died. Okay, they killed him for revealing the truth. Right here. Al Pratt suspected something was wrong with his friend Philip. Bro, Al had gone to Phil's apartment in Wilsonville, Oregon, saw his car in the parking lot, but received no answer at the door. Finally, on January 17th, 1996, Al Pratt, along with the manager of the Odom Park Apartments, had a detective from the county sheriff's office entered the apartment. Inside, they found the body of, apparently he had been dead for 5 to 7 days. The following day, began to surface, leading some to believe that Phil Snyder had not died from a stroke, but had in fact been murdered. Okay, so you can pause the video and read that right there. I'm pretty much done reading. I'm gonna keep scanning, so you can pause it if you want to read that. All right. So we're gonna watch a video on him because he talks about underground. He came across, and they actually lasered his fingers open and opened him up like a fish. It took off one of his toes too. So I think they took off 3 fingers, opened his chest open, and took off one of his toes. So we're gonna listen to that real quick. Here we go.
Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer, applications, self-taught metallurgist, became kind of famous in my own right. I basically would have a set of notes here, but they're unavailable. All this melee. Up here I have different artifacts explaining, some of them are alien metals that have been produced both on this planet and the confines of outer space that are now used in all stealth aircraft. All stealth aircraft, for instance, all black jets, what you're seeing of black helicopters and the like. The skins and the coatings and the residues that are used predominantly in in the aircraft themselves, in the airframes and the rotor blades and the fans, and in some cases in submarines, special titanium hulls in the Phoenix class submarines now. All this has come from alien technology. 1947 is what the public has been told. Something crashed in the backyard in New Mexico, a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Unfortunately, that's what the public's been told. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years, and they first saw their glimpse of what was going on as early as 1909 in the American Southwest. Now, Army cavalry evidently were chasing some bandits, and they entered this cave. They were holed up in a cave, and what they found in there was flying discs and little gray guys and all kinds of weird things, and they didn't know how to explain that, and they wrote them down as best they could, and it's been in secret archives ever since. That's up down by the Truth or Consequences area of New Mexico. Well, the alien thing is more than just what I'd call a non-visible threat. We on the surface, first of all information dealing with alien or alien reproduced vehicles or any other kinds of things, well hidden from the American public. Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site. It used to take a year to 2 years to build each one, and now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods. Al Bielek has actually been on some of the high-speed railways, the magneto-leviton trains that connect all the deep underground military bases within the United States. He's been on a Mach 2 train and floats off of a single rail at a 3/4 of an inch off the rail, and is what you'd call high tech. We have nothing like this on the surface. The public basically has been totally lied to. We're considered stupid or even moronic in some cases. It's got to stop. If we're going to gain our country back, we must, and I repeat, must instill in our public officials, anybody's public service, what's the truth. If they cannot do this, then must be impeached, or they must be removed from office. If this cannot occur, if the truth cannot totally come out, there are reasons for secrecy, for instance, but if the truth cannot totally come out, what's the use in us having anything called freedom? Okay, now I have pictures here that I'm going to show you during the break in artifacts. I ask you to kind of look at them but not handle them. I have actual metal from Roswell, New Mexico. It's given to me when I was 14 years old. For instance, I've got other things. I've got pieces of titanium, a special titanium alloy made for everything from the original SR-71 Blackbird. That's old hat now. F-117A is their old hat now. They're making a whole new class of hypersonic above Mach 5 aircraft that employ extremely modern charged particle beam weapons. They don't even use lasers anymore. Computer enhanced imaging radar, although it's used in helicopters for public surveillance, computer enhanced imaging radar, and in satellite technology. Brand new kid on the block is a kind of infrared technology for a satellite at 150,000 miles out in a geosynchronous orbit, or not quite geosynchronous orbit, but these spy satellites can literally look in and see a dime on the floor, let's say on your kitchen floor. They have a resolution factor of 99.999961. This particular piece of metal, I'm going to drop it on the floor here. It'll kind of ring like a bell. You can't break it. Withstand temperatures in excess of 7,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It has niobium in it. It also has mironite in it, element 123. Yeah, please do. It's in a non-crystalline form. This is just kind of a dripping out of the main crucible. Here's a crystalline example. It's in the scalenohedral crystalline form. We got this from the large grays technology. This is grown in the confines of outer space, which has not quite a super vacuum, but by the way, this is capable of withstanding temperatures in excess of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's great for certain parts of aircraft. This kind of material I work with on a daily basis. Up here we have a transparency of Groom Lake. The infamous Area 51, S4, S2, a CIA base. It was originally a bombing range, a nuclear test site. It was later become the most secret base in the United States. Over 18,000 workers who work in shifts of 12 hours at a whack. Most of them work in the cover of darkness, like us. We built out 9 underground military bases there, each with an average capable was basically a city underground, roughly 4.25 cubic miles hollowed out underground. They have boring machines, for instance. They don't bore. They literally vitrify and melt the rock, deflagrate the rock. It's a very sophisticated laser melting and deflagrating system. It reduces the rock to a powder and then melts the remaining rock as a coating on the inside of the base, so you don't have to use gunite cements and other kinds of things like that. That's all old hat now. Basically, we get is the old hat of the military. I'm going to be real brief about it. I carried a level 1 security clearance, the Riley 38 factor. There are very few of us, except myself, to my knowledge, talking. Nobody. I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking world as well as federal law about this to a group of people. I love my country more than I love my life. 2 weeks ago, I was shot in the shoulder. I don't want to gore you women out, but I was shot in the shoulder up here. I recently have become friends of a retired FBI agent who took me under the wing. He says, I've never seen a person braver than you. And I said, well, there's more coming. Our patriot movement in these United States is going to pick up the ball, and we are going to kick the parasites out. First of all, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and a few other founding fathers, Patrick Henry to mention a few, visions that these United States is going to live 700 years from where they were standing, and that was somewhere around the late 1700s, early 1800s. So you can count this country. This country isn't going to go to a new world order. I believe firmly in constitutional law. I'm not very well skilled at it, and that's my embarrassment. But I'm going to be real blunt about it. The government that is now instilled in ruling over us are ruling as we're serfs and they're the kings and queens. Now, that's a feudal system. That isn't even a democracy. We are now being ruled by an autocracy and a technocracy. Technical knowledge of rules as king. with a feudal type system. Feudal systems haven't been used in the last 350 years, and they're coming back like gangbusters. If we are complacent, if we do not speak out in droves, and I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about getting together and getting on the stump and loving our country more than we love our lives, getting on, some of us are going to get killed. I almost got killed a couple of weeks ago. Hadn't been for an FBI, a retired FBI man, who risked his life, his career, everything, put it all on the line, and he didn't know me from Adam. A week prior to that, he listened to one of my tapes I gave up in Post Falls, Idaho, and I'm going to be very blunt about. He said that we need a lot more of you, but unfortunately, we're not getting anybody. Well, I'm not the best speaker in the world, but I'm trying to relay to you that we need to get out and seriously get the message out. They're great. This hall should be absolutely packed, standing room only. We should be getting the message out to as many people as we can with as many shows as there are is a to reach. The many is the public. We ought to get on talk shows. We've got to get on news shows and TV shows, really get the message out. And I think we're doing it. It's a little bit slow. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down and we want to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody.
About 2 more minutes, I'm going to end it with this part.
When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. Large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. Had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up. And, well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and then you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and then you use blasting equipment and special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person or the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This is in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes. You got a regular, but you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me, and the electrical worse because of the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt, burned all my toenails off of me. Completely crispy crittered my left foot. Burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember is the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the bench and hit the button. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. 6 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, cracked lives because the government, our U.S. government, lied to tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. And since that time, since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilian, the whole thing. There are 11 distinct races of aliens. 2 are benevolent. One had to leave here in a hurry because their world is under attack, both on the surface as well as underground there, the Pleiadians. They're familiar, maybe some of you are familiar. Would some of you raise your hands who've heard of Billy Meyer and some of the, doing very good, about half the group.
All right, so this guy is certified in the military. He has credentials up the yin yang. Not just some crazed guy, okay? So he's pretty much saying the same thing that Kyle Odom was saying. He's verifying that, saying he saw them underground. Okay, boom. So, hold on one second. So I'm going to do this one now. This is more verification too.
My name is Alfred Bielik, more commonly known as Al Bielik. Is Edward Cameron. Acquiring this CD. The purpose of it is my history, as I best researched it over the years, as I have learned it can possibly be. I have been involved in the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk Project, time travel, alien connections at the Montauk Project, and some other projects, all of which have been secret over the years, most of which have never been declassified. The purpose of this CD is to give you a base of information, as I have found it. Certainly not everything that may be known on these subjects, but all that I have acquired, which is over 11 years. When I first became aware of my involvement with the Philadelphia experiment in January 1988, I had no idea how extensive my use, shall we say, by the government has been, nor where my research would go. I have been involved in many radio presentations, over 50, such people as Art Bell, Mr. Jarvis, and others. And in terms of direct presentations before a live audience, over 50 around the world, extensively in the United States, in Europe, and in Australia. I've been from the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk Project, mind control, some discussion of aliens, and related subjects. And they all fit together. They're trying to understand how they fit together in the complex web which is involved is really the purpose of the CD, so that you, the viewer, may get some better idea of what information you have been denied by our government, been denied by the media, and give you a base of information so you can do your own research. Those of you who may be skeptical, because frankly, the presentation is going to become rather bizarre as we go on with it. For those of you who are skeptical, I say fine. It is quite healthy to be skeptical, which means you don't accept either I or any of the other presenters on the CD say at face value. But go do your homework if you don't quite believe us, which is, as I say, quite healthy. On research, and I feel confident that eventually you will understand that what we are presenting is the truth. But that is for you to decide. The purpose is to educate. The purpose is to get you to think. The purpose is to things which you may have wondered about for years and which you have had only very sketchy information presented to you from other sources. We'll go into the history of the Philadelphia experiment, how it overlapped eventually into the Montauk Project, people who were involved. Other presenters and myself will be such persons as Preston Nichols, who was heavily involved in the Montauk Project, Mike Stu Swerdlow, who was also involved in the Montauk Project and connection with aliens. And they all overlap and interlock. Another man who was involved with the Montauk Project, who, by the way, it is not his real name, but at his request, we will not use his real name. Many other people have been involved, but in many cases, we have not been able to get their consent to an interview. And of course, many of the people involved in these projects in the past are now deceased or have, shall we say, vanished into the woodwork. As the case may be, we will go on and present to you as best we can the history as I know it and give you some food for thought. Many of these projects lasted many years. The Philadelphia experiment, for example, did not begin in 1943, but began much earlier in 1931 and involved many people. It was, of course, Nikola Tesla, and there were many others. Many people have made contributions to many of these research projects. I was involved also during the war years, not only with the Philadelphia experiment, but Los Alamos and the atomic bomb project. I've been involved in many projects. These up, you're welcome to use the website. If you type my name in as Al Bielik on the website, you will find something today of over 1,800 hits. So that might keep you busy for a while. As for Preston, he's on the web also. Stu Swerdlow's on the web. Larry is not. There are other people. There are other sources of information. There are many others who have published on something which they know about either the Philadelphia experiment or the Montauk Project. Unfortunately, I'll have to say some of this may prove and does prove to be disinformation. But you, the viewer, must decide. How do you separate out information from disinformation? That has been a classic question for a long time. It takes a lot of research. It takes a base of knowledge. You have to start someplace. Knowledge and information on the subject. And as you do, eventually you'll start to see a pattern. The pattern may emerge as disinformation. Fine. You then throw away the disinformation, you continue, you will eventually come up with the true information. Process, it is not. I've had to do it myself. In the process of uncovering information and on my own memories that you swear are true, but then you find that there's some distortion. You didn't remember exactly all the details. And it takes a great deal of time and a great deal of depth of research and going back time and again into your memories to find out what really happened. In order to correlate, you have to have other people who were involved at that time or have memories or information, hard information in some cases, of what occurred at that time. It takes a lot of work to eventually come up with a complete, or at least, if not complete, a true story insofar as you know it. So that is what basically I'm presenting here, as well as the other presenters. The purpose is to educate you as to what has happened, where the government has deliberately covered up information, covered up complete reports, covered up complete experiments, a complete history, such as the Philadelphia experiment. The Montauk Project, relatively few people have heard of, yet the site still exists on the eastern tip of Long Island, and you can go out there personally and view what's left of the buildings. Today, they are in the process of being torn down, but 1 year ago, they were almost all there. Hard research does show a lot of hardware and a lot of artifacts, if you will, which support the evidence we will present. The evidence will be in many categories. It will be hardcore evidence. There will be many pictures. There will be presentations by myself and others detailing the history as we remember it. And there will be also some documentation, perhaps after the main presentation, showing other areas of research you might engage, other references, of which there are a few, and where you might go for further information. We hope that your journey through this CD, which is going to be an extensive one, will be a happy one, will be one of education, will be one which will give you a further insight into history which you may not otherwise have had and otherwise will not have because the media is not touching it. And quite aside from the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, which was close to the truth of what happened, but of course, not blaming Hollywood, they have to present a story. And of course, it was embellished with a typical Hollywood love story and other aspects which did not quite fit the facts. But for those of you who have not seen The Philadelphia Experiment, the movie, it is out there both in CD and in the older form VHS video. If you have not seen the commercial movie, I suggest it's worth seeing. It doesn't give you the whole truth, but it gives you an insight. And as you progress through what I have to say and others have to say, that those who did the movie definitely knew, at least to some extent, the facts of what happened. Doing this and viewing other things in terms of other presenters, you will eventually come to an understanding of the real history, which I might add is not easy. We welcome you to this bit of work.
So my point of showing that is that there's a lot going on that the media is not showing us and won't show us. Like you said, they won't even touch it. And that the government is hiding. So again, this goes back to Kyle Odom. The media is saying that he shot Tim Remington 6 times when really he shot him 12 times. And, you know, the underground facilities that even fill underground tunnels and even came across these entities underground. So to get a full understanding, you need to open your mind to a lot of things. And I think the Montauk project in the Philadelphia Experiment is one way to get a full understanding. So he does actually a video, 7.5 hour video, which I've watched already 3 times. So don't say you don't have time for it. You can just put it on in the background while you clean out your closet. It doesn't matter. Because you're going to see correlations in it. So, all right. So that my point is to show that. Okay. So moving on. All right. So let's close that out. So we're going to go to this is the guy in I didn't show the other video because it was 1.5 hours and I don't have time for that. But this is supposedly this guy right here is from Venus. Okay, now I believe in the flat earth, so I don't know what kind of being this is. He said it's, you know, it's a good one. I don't know, whatever. So anyways, that's a picture of that. He's not supposed to be human. So let's get that out of here. Okay, so we're gonna watch this real quick, and then no. First, we should look at this. Beware of the Council of 13. First, hold on, let me look at the chat. All right, who's up in here? Oh, what's up, PG? Hi, positive about this. That's fine. It's not an argument about whether it's flat or not. There's other things going on in this world that I need to move on to. All right, moving on. So here we go. This is Andrew Basago. He claims that Obama's been to Mars. So this also correlates with Kyle Odom. He says Obama's been to Mars. He went into it's called a trip. And he's been to Mars. So we're going to watch this real quick. It's interesting. And I thought it, you know, it's fun. Let's watch. Here we go.
Enterprise. But I was always able to get out of them.
See what I just did there? And I didn't even have Scotty to beat me up. But can we somehow transport ourselves from one location to another in an instant? Things like that are science fiction, right? Oh. 1960, suburban New Jersey. 6-year-old Andrew Bashiaco was about to have the most incredible day of his life.
Asiago.
My dad called out to my mother and said, "Hon, I'm taking Andy to the hardware store." Instead, he drove me up to the old aeronautical company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey. Defense technical experimental area that dated back to World War II.
As they enter the facility, Andrew wonders why his father Frank referred to a place like this.
Oh, and real quick, also Kyle had mentioned alternate dimensions and realities, and so this also plays into that too.
I didn't know what was happening.
Andrew's dad leads him to a secret room. Inside is something unlike anything he's ever seen before.
It was so strange. It essentially consisted of 2 elliptical-shaped booms that were about 8 feet tall and about 10 feet across.
It's a machine that's beyond Andrew's comprehension. Whatever it is, his father is clearly in charge. But why? And what is it for?
I had the technician turn the device on.
As Andrew watches, the booms begin to spin, generating a strange cascade of energy.
That looked almost like water falling in a public fountain. It was a very beautiful, sort of shimmering field of energy.
As the energy field from the machine grows, something incredible. It tells his son to take his hand. Then the unimaginable happens.
We counted down 1, 2, 3. On a count of 3, we jumped through the field of energy. We seemed to be moving, and I could ultimately see a point of light in the distance. And that light reached us very quickly, accelerating. And when the light hit us, we were elsewhere in the country. Now, my father didn't tell me where we were going. In fact, we were jumping 2,005 miles through this orbital tunnel in the fabric of time-space to the state capitol grounds in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
It's an astonishing claim. Did 2 humans actually transport from New Jersey to New Mexico in the blink of an eye? What happened to Andrew and his father? Is his story just a wild fantasy of a 6-year-old? Bashiaco believes there is only one answer.
I think I must have teleported. Imagine traveling through the Lincoln Tunnel in New York City at 10,000 miles per hour without any automobile around. That's sort of what it was like. We were physically moving through a orbital tunnel in the fabric of time-space.
Had Andrew's father, Frank, invented the world's first teleportation machine? And if so, why? Frank Bashiaco was no ordinary dad. During the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviets raced for military superiority. Frank was head of a top-secret American research team who were conducting experiments into teleportation. But why did Frank use his son as a guinea pig?
Dad's immediate goal in inviting me to teleport was to show that if teleportation was safe for his son, it was safe for anybody's child. And I was in it as a child, just as, for example, a child may have been aboard, one of Columbus's boats, or may have been an office boy to the Wright brothers, or an assistant to Thomas Alva Edison.
After the success of his experiment, Frank Bashiaco decides teleportation is too important to keep secret. He wants to tell the world, but the U.S. military disagrees.
And so the unfortunate history of U.S. teleportation is that it has remained essentially a military secret ever since. Today, I am leading the Truth campaign. I'm urging the United States government to declassify teleportation to allow people to teleport between major world cities. The way I see it, I have a duty simply to stand in my truth and tell it.
Did Frank Bashiaco invent a machine that could instantly transport us across the world or even to other dimensions? Is teleportation possible?
I wouldn't like to be the first one to be teleported, I would worry to end up maybe like a Picasso painting.
A boy enters a teleportation machine and is suddenly transported thousands of miles in seconds. Is human teleportation possible? Raymond Lovelock is a physicist. He thinks the idea we can teleport our bodies is simply fantasy.
It seems that a lot of physics are more constrained than the imagination of human beings. The first idea that we have when we think about teleportation is the Star Trek idea. Beam me up, Scotty. The idea of taking a person suddenly disintegrate in some form and reappearing up in a space station. Now, this is something that happens in science fiction.
But incredibly, although Lovelock dismisses the idea that people can teleport, it can happen in other ways, because he was one of the first scientists to do it.
We're not teleporting matter from one location to the other. We're really teleporting information.
Wait a second. Teleporting information? How is that any different than sending an email?
When we send an email, or even when we talk on our cell phone, the information goes from the sender to the intervening space to a receiver.
Remarkably, Lovelock has been able to teleport information without it traveling through any device at all.
What has been teleported is one quantum bit of information, or qubit, is sent from one location to the other. It has happened in resonance, where the information has gone from one atom of a molecule to another one. But it has also appeared in optics, where people have put information or quantum information in a particle of light called photons, send it to another location a few kilometers away, and then made it reappear over there. We've been able to teleport a few kilometers, taking one particle of information and make it reappear a few kilometers down the line. We've been able to do this.
See?
It works like this. In the world of quantum physics, even the tiniest particles are somehow connected, even across huge distances. In quantum teleportation, such entanglement